She pushed her stepdaughter into the fire, but what happened next shocked the entire village. The flames didn't consume her. Instead, they awakened a power no one saw coming. You won't believe how this innocent girl returned to claim justice and change their fate forever. In the volcanic highlands of Okwal, the ground rumbled with a quiet power, and thick clouds of smoke often rose from the sacred fire pits that sat just beyond the village. These pits weren't feared, they were worshipped. The elders said the fire was alive. It could see lies, it could smell wickedness, and it could judge. The villagers believed that the flames had their own will, given by the spirits of ancient warriors who once ruled the mountains. They called it the fire of truth. Every 10 years, during the season of Ember, a girl was chosen by the elders to become the flame bearer. It wasn't about beauty or strength. It was about purity, kindness, truth. The flame bearer would enter the fire during the sacred festival, walk into the pit before the whole village, light the ceremonial torch from within the flames, and return untouched. If she was pure, the fire would protect her. But if her heart held secrets, lies, or evil, the fire would consume her, leaving only smoke and ash behind. No one ever questioned the tradition. It had been followed for generations. Some whispered that once a girl tried to bribe the elders to be chosen. The fire burned her instantly. Others told tales of a girl who had stolen from the market as a child. She vanished in the flames. The fire didn't forgive, and it never made mistakes. This belief shaped everything in Okwal. Children grew up fearing lies, not because of punishment from parents, but because of the fire. Mothers told their daughters, "Keep your heart clean. The fire knows." People lived with honor, not just out of duty, but out of fear of being chosen when their hearts were not ready. The flame bearer wasn't just a symbol. She was seen as the bridge between the spirits and the people. For 10 years, she would carry a piece of the sacred fire, protect the village from curses, and speak truth in times of conflict. It was an honor greater than royalty, but it was also a dangerous gift, because the fire saw what no one else could, and once chosen, there was no escape. As the next Ember Festival approached, whispers filled the air. The elders were watching, listening, studying the girls of the village. Every step, every word, every act of kindness or cruelty was being silently noted. And though the names of possible candidates floated around, no one knew who would be called until the drums sounded. In Okwale, the fire had the final word. Nara was the only child of Chief Aboku, the well-loved leader of Okwale. The people adored him for his fairness and strength. But when his wife died giving birth to Nara, the chief was never quite the same. He poured all his love into raising Nara, calling her "my gentle flame" because of her calm nature and warm heart. When Nara was 8, the chief remarried. Her stepmother, Diona, came from a distant village. She was strikingly beautiful, with skin like polished bronze and eyes that hid secrets. People praised her grace, but behind closed doors, her smile vanished. At first, Diona pretended to care, but after Chief Aboku died suddenly during a hunting trip, everything changed. Nara was just 13. With no mother and no father left, she became a servant in her own home. Diona took control of the household and treated Nara like a stranger. She claimed it was tradition that only the bloodline of the second wife would inherit authority. Nara's world shrank. While Diona's daughter, Voka, wore silk dresses and attended village feasts, Nara scrubbed floors with bare hands and fetched water before sunrise. She slept on mats in the cold storehouse, beside broken pots and rats, while Voka rested on fine cushions and ate roasted quail with honey. The villagers noticed the change but said nothing. No one dared question the widow of a chief. Despite all this, Nara never showed anger. She did her work quietly, always gentle, always calm. When other girls mocked her dirty clothes or called her the forgotten flame, she just smiled and walked away. Her heart carried pain, but her eyes carried peace. She would often sit near the fire pits at night, speaking to the flames in whispers, as if they were old friends. Some children laughed at her, others grew curious, but Nara didn't explain. She found comfort in the silence of the fire. What no one knew was that Nara had dreams where her father spoke to her from within the fire. He told her to stay patient, to remain true, that the fire would know when the time came. She believed him. And so, she held on to her kindness like armor, even when Diona tore her clothes or Voka poured oil in her stew. Diona often warned Voka, "Never touch the fire pits. They know who's pure." but she laughed when she saw Nara sitting near the flames. Maybe the smoke has made her mad, she would say. Voka joined in, mocking her every day. But Nara never reacted. She simply smiled, picked up her water jar, and continued with her tasks. Even the elders, from a distance, had started to notice her. A girl so poor, yet never bitter, so quiet, yet so steady. There was something about Nara, like a hidden ember waiting to rise. No one could deny that she carried something rare. Nara, the girl everyone forgot, was becoming unforgettable, and soon the fire would call. The air in Okwal buzzed with excitement. Villagers gathered in the main square as the elders stepped forward in their ceremonial robes, drums beating in the distance. It was the day everyone had been waiting for, the announcement of the next flame-bearer. All eyes turned to Elder Omaz, the oldest and wisest of them all. He raised his hand for silence, then spoke clearly. The fire has chosen Nara. At first, the crowd was silent. Then, a wave of gasps filled the air, followed by loud cheers. Children clapped, women smiled, and the elders nodded in approval. She is the purest heart among us, Omaze said. Humble, patient, honest. The fire sees her truth. Nara stood frozen, unsure if she had heard correctly. Her heart pounded. The cheers grew louder, and people began to chant her name, but not everyone celebrated. From the edge of the crowd, Diana stood stiff, her face hard as stone, her fists clenched at her sides. Her daughter Voka, in her fine robes, stared in disbelief. Her, Diana muttered under her breath. That ragged girl. A servant? Her lip curled with disgust. My daughter is twice the beauty, twice the grace. This must be a joke. That night, the house was not filled with celebration. It was filled with rage. Diana sat in silence, her face dark and cold. She grabbed a clay cup from the table and smashed it against the floor with her bare hands, sharp pieces slicing her palm. Blood dripped onto the ground, but she didn't flinch. This cannot happen, she said through gritted teeth. If Nara enters that fire and comes out alive, she will become more powerful than we ever dreamed. She will carry the fire of truth and expose everything. Voka paced nervously. But the elders already made their choice, she said. What can we do? Diana's eyes burned like coals. We do what we must. She must vanish before the festival, disappear, be forgotten. She leaned in close to her daughter and whispered, if she enters that fire, it must be her last step. Let it consume her, and take our shame with it. Voka hesitated. What if the fire spares her? It won't, Diana snapped. No one survives the flames unless they are pure, and no one is truly pure, not even Nara. We just have to make sure her heart is heavy before she walks in. Voka didn't speak. Her fingers trembled slightly, but Diana was already planning, already calculating. Poison, a fall, an accident, so many ways to end a girl's story. She had gotten rid of obstacles before. She could do it again. Nara had no mother to protect her, no father to defend her, and soon, if Diana had her way, she would have no future. The fire may have chosen Nara, but Diana had made her own choice too, and she was ready to burn anything that stood in her way. The Festival of Flame was only a day away. Okwala buzzed with excitement. Villagers decorated their homes with red flowers and fire lanterns. Children sang songs of the flame bearers before Nara, and dancers practiced for the great circle dance. At the center of it all, Nara quietly prepared. She prayed beneath the ancient flame tree, fasted as tradition demanded, and kept her heart focused. She knew the fire would test her, but she believed in her truth. Hidden behind her sweet smile, Diana moved like a shadow. Her heart held no joy for the coming ceremony. She had made her decision. Nara would never walk out of that fire pit. Not alive, not if she could help it. While Nara knelt in prayer, Diana crept into the cooking hut. She crushed poisonous roots from the mountain cliffs, roots that turned the strongest legs to water. She mixed them with fine ashes from the burial grounds and stirred them into Nara's ceremonial porridge. That evening she smiled and handed Nara the bowl. You must keep your strength for the fire, she said softly. Nara hesitated, but refusing food was disrespectful. She ate, though the taste was bitter. That night, she lay curled up in the storehouse, her stomach cramping. Still, she did not complain. But Diana wasn't done. As the village slept, she entered the ceremonial hut and found Nara's sacred robe. It was white with golden embroidery, meant to shine like the morning sun. Carefully, she sewed a firestone, a large, smooth black rock, into the hem. Firestones were heavy and used by miners to break lava crusts. If Nara wore the robe into the pit, the weight would pull her deep into the flames. No one would think twice. If she didn't rise, they would believe the fire had rejected her soul. She will never rise, Diana whispered to herself. They'll call it fate, but I know the truth. Voka watched from the doorway, pale and unsure. Are you certain this will work? She asked in a low voice. Diana turned to her daughter, eyes sharp like broken glass. You want to live in Nara's shadow your whole life. She's already stolen the villagers' hearts. If she survives that fire, you will always be second. Voka swallowed hard and nodded. I just hope the fire doesn't spare her. Diana's voice dropped to a hiss. It won't, not with poison in her blood and stone on her back. Outside, the wind carried the scent of burning wood. The fire pit had already been prepared. Tomorrow, all of Okwal would gather. They would sing, they would cheer, and they would wait for the flame bearer to rise. But if Diana's plan worked, they would wait forever. And Nara, the girl who carried peace in her eyes, would vanish into the flames, blamed by the very fire that should have blessed her. The sun dipped behind the volcanic hills of Okwal, casting a fiery glow across the sky. The village square pulsed with drumbeats and chants. People danced in circles, waving flame-coloured cloths and tossing petals into the wind. Tonight was the moment they had waited for, the sacred choosing of the flame-bearer by the fire itself. Nara stood at the edge of the pit, dressed in the ceremonial robe. It shimmered red under the firelight, glowing like lava. Her heart pounded, but her face was calm. The villagers watched in silence. Even the wind paused. All eyes were on her. From the crowd, Voka smiled cruelly, standing next to her mother. Diana's eyes were fixed on Nara, hard as stone. Nara took one step forward. The flames in the pit danced higher. She took another step, and just as she reached the edge, something unexpected happened. Diana lunged forward and shoved her, hard. Gasps ripped through the crowd. Mothers covered their children's eyes. Elders clutched their walking staffs. Nara lost her balance and tumbled forward, arms flailing. Her robe fluttered like a wounded bird's wings. Then she fell straight into the fire. A giant flame leaped up toward the sky. Screams filled the air, and then silence. The fire vanished, just like that, gone. The pit, once blazing and alive, went dark. No smoke, no heat, not a trace of Nara. The villagers froze in shock. Elders exchanged fearful glances. No one had ever seen the flames go out during the ritual, not once in generations. Diana stepped forward, her voice trembling but loud. The fire has spoken, she said. She was not worthy. Her heart was not pure. The crowd murmured. Some nodded, unsure. Others cried quietly. Many fell to their knees, praying to the fire spirits. A child whispered, she was kind. Why would the fire take her? No one had an answer. Voka's smile began to fade. Even she looked unsure now. She leaned toward her mother and whispered, where did she go? Diana didn't reply. The pit remained still, empty, cold. One of the elders, Omaz, hobbled forward, his voice raspy with fear. Never has the fire gone silent like this, not even when a bearer failed. This is no rejection. This is a warning. The villagers stared at him. A warning? Someone asked. He nodded slowly. When the fire disappears, it means something unnatural has happened. Diana quickly spoke again, louder this time. Do not question the spirits. We must respect their will. But her voice cracked. Her hands trembled. In that moment, a strange wind swept through the square. The torches flickered. A low hum filled the air. It was soft, like a whisper from beneath the earth. Still, no Nara. The villagers bowed their heads. Some wept. Others walked away in silence, hearts heavy with confusion and grief. Diana smiled tightly, hiding her fear. In her mind, it was done. But in the shadows below the earth, something had begun. 3 moons passed since the fire vanished with Nara, and in those moons, everything in Okwale began to die. The crops withered, turning to ash before harvest. Rivers that once flowed like molten gold dried up into cracked beds of dust. Children who once danced barefoot now lay weak, coughing through the nights. Even the fire pits, sacred, eternal, refused to burn. The village that once glowed with heat and life now stood in cold silence. The elders fasted and prayed, but no answer came. The people whispered, their eyes full of fear. Did we offend the fire spirits? Was Nara really unworthy? No one knew what to believe. Then, one stormy afternoon, Thunder cracked the sky open. Rain poured like the heavens were weeping. As the villagers took shelter, a strange glow appeared at the village gates. At first, they thought it was lightning, but the light didn't flash and vanish. It burned steady and strong. A tall figure stood in the downpour, untouched by the rain. Her robe shimmered deep red, the color of molten stone. Around her neck hung volcanic stones, glowing faintly, but it was her palm that silenced everyone. A living flame pulsed in the center of it like a heart of fire. Omaze, the oldest elder, dropped his walking staff. His voice trembled. Nara! People stepped out one by one, stunned. The servant girl they thought had perished in the flames stood alive, but she wasn't the same. Her eyes held fire, her skin radiated warmth, and her presence felt like an ancient storm. I went into the fire, Nara said, her voice calm but echoing with power, and the spirits pulled me into the earth's heart. I saw things hidden from human eyes. I walked among ancient flames. I saw lies, and I saw truth. No one dared speak. She looked around at the village, now dry, cracked, broken. The fire has not burned since you let evil speak in its name. But the spirits have returned me, and I carry their judgment. Her words rippled through the crowd like a shockwave. Diona, watching from behind her doorway, turned pale. Voka stepped back slowly, her lips trembling. Omaze bent low in respect. The flame-bearer has returned, blessed by the fire. Children stared at her with wide eyes. Women wept quietly. The men bowed their heads. It wasn't just awe. They could feel something shift in the air. The fire had returned with her, and she wasn't just a girl anymore. Nara stepped forward, and with every step, puddles turned warm. Torches that had long been cold flickered to life. Even the sacred pit began to steam again. As if recognizing her presence, she turned her palm toward the sky, and the flame danced. The time for truth has come, she said, and the village knew. This was no longer the servant girl who once scrubbed floors. This was the flame-bearer, and she had come to reveal everything. The village gathered under the fiery skies. As the sound of the ceremonial drum echoed through Okwale, the people formed a circle around the sacred tribunal stone. Elder Omaze, his voice steady despite the tension in the air, stood tall and called the tribunal to order. At the center stood Nara, cloaked in red, her fire mark glowing softly on her palm. Across from her, Diona stood stiff, her eyes darting nervously, while Voka clung to her side. With a voice as calm as ever, Elder Omaze asked the question everyone was afraid to hear. Nara, who pushed you into the fire? The air went still. Nara turned slowly. She looked straight at Diona and raised her hand. Diona, she tried to end me. A wave of gasps swept through the crowd. Women covered their mouths, and men shook their heads in disbelief. Diona let out a cold laugh. Lies! This girl speaks with a bewitched tongue. She should have burned, and now she brings madness. But Nara didn't flinch. She simply raised her palm higher. The fire mark on it pulsed brighter, casting flickers of orange and gold across the faces of the villagers. Then the ground trembled, just for a moment, but enough to send fear through the crowd. I ask nothing but truth, Nara said. Let the fire spirits judge her. Elder Omaze nodded solemnly. Bring the truth stone. A hush fell as two guards stepped forward, carrying a small glowing rock cradled in a bowl of leaves. This was no ordinary stone. Passed down through generations, it revealed lies with heat. If the accused lied while the stone rested on their tongue, it would burn their mouth and smoke would rise. But if they told the truth, the stone stayed cool. The stone was held before Diona. She hesitated. Her eyes flicked toward the crowd, searching for a way out. But all eyes were locked on her. There was no escape. With trembling hands, she took the truth stone and placed it on her tongue. A beat of silence. Then, she screamed. Her scream pierced the air like a jagged blade. Smoke curled out of her mouth, and her eyes widened in horror. The stone clattered to the ground, blackened and steaming. Villagers recoiled. Some stepped back in fear. Others whispered prayers. The spirits have spoken, Elder Omaze declared, his voice heavy. Diona fell to her knees, coughing and weeping. Voka tried to run, but the guards caught her. Nara stood still, her fire mark now dimming as justice settled in the air. She did not smile. She did not gloat. She simply closed her eyes, and the fire around the village flared high for a moment, as though the spirits themselves nodded in agreement. Truth had been revealed, lies had burned, and the flames of Okwale had chosen their justice. The sun hovered low as the villagers gathered at the edge of the sacred fire pit. The wind howled through the trees, carrying whispers of judgment. Diona and Voka were bound in ropes, their hands tied behind them, their faces pale with fear. The flames inside the pit crackled quietly, waiting. Voka, shaking, broke down in tears. "I didn't know," she cried out to the crowd. "Mama told me it was just a test. She said Nara would survive if she was worthy." Some villagers looked at each other with pity, others with anger. Nara stepped forward, her long red robe swaying with each step. Her eyes lingered on Voka, not with hatred, but with sorrow. Still, her voice was steady and filled with strength. "The fire doesn't punish those who are misled," Nara said. "It punishes those who lead with evil." Voka collapsed to her knees, sobbing louder, but Diona remained standing, her chin lifted in pride, her lips curled in defiance. She scanned the faces of the people, faces she once fooled with her beauty and charm, now twisted in disgust and rage. "She lied to the spirits," one man shouted. "She tried to murder the flame bearer," another screamed. The cries for justice grew louder, angrier. "Let her burn!" someone yelled. "Silence," Nara said calmly, lifting one hand. The fire in the pit flickered, responding to her command. The crowd fell silent. "This is not about revenge," she said. "This is about truth. The spirits speak through fire. Let them decide. One last time." Elder Omaz stepped forward, holding the final judgment staff. "Diona of Okwale," he said, his voice booming. "You are given one chance. Kneel before the fire, confess your crimes, and you shall be exiled forever, never to return. But if you lie again, the fire will choose your fate." The pit roared slightly, as if listening. Voka looked up at her mother. "Please, Mama, kneel. Say you're sorry. We can live." But Diona's eyes narrowed. She pulled her shoulders back and lifted her chin higher. "I regret nothing," she said loudly. "I only regret that the fire didn't finish her the first time." A hush swept over the village. Even the wind seemed to pause. Nara closed her eyes and whispered to the flames. The fire leapt higher, glowing deep red. A surge of heat passed through the crowd. The ropes binding Diona burst into flames. She screamed, trying to run, but the fire followed her every step. Voka cried out, "No! Mama!" Nara turned away, her face calm but heavy with pain. Diona stumbled backward into the pit, and the flames swallowed her, but they did not touch Voka. The fire settled, the air cooled, justice was done. The villagers bowed to Nara, their flame-bearer, not just chosen by them, but chosen by the spirits. And on that day, they knew. True fire does not only burn, it reveals. The moment the villagers waited for arrived suddenly and without warning. The fire in the sacred pit leapt higher than ever before, flames twisting and swirling on their own, as if alive. The air crackled with energy. No one moved. All eyes were fixed on Diona. Her confident smirk faded instantly. Her breath hitched as tendrils of fire snaked toward her feet like living serpents. Panic took hold. She tried to pull away, but the ropes held firm, binding her like a prisoner of her own evil. "Help me!" she screamed, but no one dared to move forward. The crowd watched, frozen in shock and fear. Voka's tears streamed down her face as she was yanked backward by Nara's guards. "No, Mama!" she cried out, reaching for her mother, but her arms were torn away. Nara stood tall, calm and unshaken, watching the fire judge the wicked. The flames climbed slowly, licking up Diona's legs, wrapping around her like a burning vine. But something strange happened. The fire did not consume her flesh. Instead, her skin began to harden, turning rough and grey like cold stone. The fire's heat solidified into an unbreakable prison. Her terrified screams froze mid-air as her body transformed. Arms, torso, and face turned to cold, cracked rock. Her mouth hung open in a silent scream, eyes wide in eternal denial, forever captured in her moment of horror. The villagers gasped in awe and fear. They realized the fire was not just burning her, it was cursing her, turning her into a living statue, a warning to all who dared spread cruelty and hatred. Voka fell to her knees, sobbing beside the stone figure of her mother. The curse had spared her, but it showed clearly the price of wickedness. As the last flames died down, a calm settled over Okwale. The crops, which had withered under Diona's dark influence, began to sprout fresh green leaves. The children who had fallen ill slowly recovered, their laughter returning to the village air. The fire pit glowed once again, its sacred flames warm and steady, a sign that justice and balance had been restored. The villagers gathered around the fire pit, whispering tales of the day the flames judged a wicked heart and turned it to stone. Nara stood among them, her fire mark shining proudly. She had not only survived the fire, but had become the true flame-bearer, protector of truth and justice. The statue of Diona remains at the edge of the fire pit to this day, a silent guardian of the lesson learned. It warns every villager that no evil can hide from the fire's truth. Her frozen denial serves as a reminder that the flames will always burn the guilty, no matter how deep their hatred or how dark their lies. Peace returned to Okwal, and with it, hope for a brighter future, one where the pure-hearted shine and the wicked find no refuge. After the fire had judged the wicked and the curse lifted, the village of Okwale changed forever. Nara, the girl who once scrubbed floors and slept in the storehouse, was now crowned Queen of the Flame. The people gathered beneath the blazing fire pits, their faces glowing with hope and respect. The elders placed a crown of volcanic stones on Nara's head, a symbol of her strength, purity, and the truth she carried in her heart. This moment was not just a crowning, it was the dawn of a new era for Okwale. As queen, Nara ruled with kindness and fairness. She remembered her own suffering under Diona's cruelty, and she vowed to never let injustice take root in her land again. She opened her doors to all, poor or rich, and made sure every voice was heard. Her rule was not about power, but about healing and restoring what had been broken. Slowly, the village flourished under her care. The fields grew green again, children played freely, and the fire pits burned bright, always protecting the truth. Even Voka, once spoiled and arrogant, learned humility. She became Nara's scribe, writing down the queen's laws and stories. Every day, Voka was reminded of the fire's mercy, the fire that spared her life and taught her the price of cruelty. Serving Nara was her way to make peace with her past and prove she could change. The villagers saw this transformation and learned a powerful lesson. Even those who fall can rise if given a chance, and if they choose kindness. Nara's legend spread far beyond the volcanic highlands. People from distant lands came to hear the story of the girl who was thrown into the fire, but came back stronger, not just surviving the flames, but ruling through them. She who was thrown into the fire came back to reign through it, they whispered in awe. Her story was a reminder that true strength comes from within, and that fire, which can destroy, can also purify and empower. Jealousy had set the trap that nearly destroyed Nara, but fate had its own plan. The fire that was meant to burn her became the very force that made her queen. It showed everyone that no matter how deep the darkness around you, the light of truth and justice can always shine through. Nara's journey became a beacon of hope, inspiring generations to face their challenges with courage and to believe that even the harshest trials can lead to greatness. Okwala was never the same after Nara's rise. The villagers learned to respect the fire spirits, to honor truth, and to protect the pure-hearted. They knew now that jealousy and hatred could spark dangerous flames, but those flames could never win against the power of a kind and fearless heart. Nara the Fire Queen ruled wisely and well, forever remembered as the girl who carried the flame of justice, and whose story proved that fate will always light the match when jealousy sets the trap. Her reign was a testament to the power of resilience and the magic of truth, a legend that burned bright in the hearts of all who believed. If this story of Nara, the brave flame-bearer who rose from darkness to become a queen, has touched your heart, then remember, no matter how hard life's fires may burn, they can never destroy a pure and courageous spirit. Just like Nara, we all have a fire inside us, a strength that can turn pain into power, cruelty into kindness, and darkness into light. Her journey reminds us to hold on to hope, to forgive even when it's difficult, and to believe that justice will always find its way. If you feel inspired by Nara's story, don't keep it to yourself. Share this video with someone who needs a reminder that they are stronger than their struggles. Spread the message that true power comes from the heart, and that no matter what challenges we face, we can rise above them with courage and grace. Please take a moment to like this video if it moved you. Your support means the world and helps us bring more powerful stories like this one to life. And if you want to see more inspiring tales that touch the soul and teach valuable life lessons, make sure to subscribe to our channel. Join our community where hope and strength burn brighter every day. Thank you so much for watching and believing in the power of stories. Remember, just like Nara, you have a flame inside you waiting to shine. Keep it burning and never give up.